Thank you for joining this live session today. My name is Raman Jaggi, and I'm currently working with Khalifa Fund, heading the training department.
Thank you for joining this live
Prior to
session
joining
today.
Khalifa Fund in
My name is Raman
2012,
Jaggi,
I have
and
served
I'm
at different
currently working
positions
with
in
Khalifa
Bahrain
Fund
and back in
in
India,
India.
and
Thank you
also
for
worked
joining
on
this
different
live
assignments
session
in
today.
many
My
countries
name
in
is
the
Raman
MENA
Jaggi.
region.
I have served at
It's my
different
pleasure
positions.
and privilege to introduce you to the two panel experts which are with me today. From Khalifa Fund, my colleague and my dear friend Khalifa Al Kuwaiti is on the panel, and from MAGNiTT, Mr. Sitse is representing the research at the MAGNiTT. I will soon start the Q&A session with my colleagues here, with the panel of experts, and keep sending, use the Q&A options and keep sending your questions. We will have some time towards the end of the session where I'll be able to pick up some of your questions and ask the panelists directly. We don't promise that we'll be able to ask all questions which are sent to us. We will definitely try our level best to ask maximum questions sent by the audience today. So let us start our discussion today. And I would now like to request Mr. Khalifa and Mr. Seetse to make their initial remarks about their work and about their role in each organization. And then I will jump on to the specific questions. So let us start with Mr. Khalifa Al Kuwaiti. Khalifa, the mic is mute.
Yes, thank you, Raman. Just want to highlight before I start for all the audience that I'm wearing sunglasses because I did a surgery actually yesterday for my eye, and the doctor recommended I wear this for the next 3 days. Um, so start. Hello and good afternoon. My name is Khalifa Al-Kuwaiti. I'm the head of the entrepreneur support management at Khalifa Fund. I've been with Khalifa Fund for 6 years. Prior to Khalifa Fund, I were in the security regulators as an inspection and AML unit. Khalifa Fund, it's a non-profit organization owned by Abu Dhabi government. Since inception in 2007, we expanded through the years to cover not only Abu Dhabi, all the Emirates. And in 2014, Khalifa Fund expanded globally, where we replicated Khalifa Fund in various countries, like in Asia, Africa, we have 22 countries, and Middle East, we have Jordan and Egypt. Khalifa Fund work in four main pillars. That's to close the gaps in the applicants' need in the UAE markets. Starting with the first one is the funding, not only non-interest loan. Basically, funding is a full package starting from the idea to business evaluation as well, business implementation and operation. This will take up to 7 years in most projects. We also have a support service, which is I'm heading off, and we have a capacity building. Mr. Raman is part of this department, where they do in-house training and they collaborate with the stakeholder to deliver a special training. We also have a consultancy service. This is open for all our applicants and for public recently. Going back and focusing more into the entrepreneur support, we have three main pillars that we work in. First one is ease of business and business development. We work to promote and market access by opening channel as well as encourage our applicant to participate in a specific event, trade shows and exhibition, and SME networking, which is very important. Number three is a growth program. We have a specific growth program where we work one-to-one with an entrepreneur to become a franchisor or to start exporting. All this done through a network with the government in in UAE and the federal and local level. We also sign 67 MOUs with big players in the private sector to provide world-class treatment, fees waiver, ease of business for our applicant. Hope to deliver a valuable information to our audience today. And thank you.
Thank you, Raman and Khalifa. I'm excited to be here and to do this together. Just a little introduction about myself and about MAGNiTT as well, because of course I understand that some of you might have not heard of MAGNiTT or don't know exactly what we do. We are also built on 4 core pillars. The first of which is what we call Connect, and this is very much at the core of what we do at MAGNiTT, which is bridging the gap between the startup ecosystem in the Middle East and North Africa. So you can think of investors, entrepreneurs, big corporations and governments that are interested in the space. We try to bring them all together on an online platform. The second pillar that we have is what we call the data. So that's where entities come to us for information on those startups and investors and everyone involved. And the third pillar, which I am leading at MAGNiTT, is what we call the research pillar. So this is where we use the data that we have on the platform to actually create research reports for our clients, as well as publicly available ones, so free ones that you can download. Today, we actually launched another report with SBC and about Saudi Arabia, and those will give you a little bit of information or a more in-depth feel of venture capital and investments in tech startups specifically. So that's our aim. And the last pillar that we focus on is what we call news, which is an aggregation of all the interesting news pieces that we think are interesting to an audience that wants to know more about startups, about technology, about investments, and government initiatives as well, of course, because there's a lot happening in the space, and we just want to be, the core focus of that all. And yeah, I'm excited to join this panel. Raman, I think you're muted.
I think you should.
Okay. Thank you. Sitse, actually the mic was not getting unmuted. I think you closed for everyone. Anyway, thank you very much both Khalifa and Sitse for the nice introduction. Khalifa, as we go forward, and Sitse, as we go forward, we will have chance, the kind list of questions I have with me here, to know more about each organization, this specific role being played, and regarding the landscape, regarding the ecosystem, we'll have questions. So I will start with the Q&A now, if you allow me. My first question I would like to put to our colleague from MAGNiTT. Sitse, if I may read out a question for you. Can you please give us an overview of the entrepreneurship ecosystem in the MENA region, and more specifically into the UAE, so that from this discussion, we will build upon our further questions for you and Khalifa together. Thank you.
Of course. Well, as I mentioned, we focus specifically on the tech startup ecosystem, and as we've seen in our reports and just the activity in general, there's been a big increase in both investments and just general activity within the entirety of the MENA region. Speaking specifically about the UAE, we actually saw that UAE was one of the first movers within the MENA region. So you see that a lot of the later stage startups are actually active in and have their headquarters in the UAE, which is also why if you look at the amount of funding, so the dollar amount invested in those startups, the UAE still accounts for around 60% of all dollar investments in the first half of 2020. And that's purely because, when startups reach those later stages, they just raise more money to keep going and expanding to other countries in the region. But like I said, the entirety of the MENA region has been growing. And we see other countries like Saudi Arabia, Egypt increase as well. And one thing that I wanted to mention here as well is that I think that the government support of this is very, very important. And you see a lot of it in the region. And like I mentioned, in the UAE specifically as well, because there are just so many initiatives to make it easier to set up a business, to do business in the country, which is a big accelerant for startups in the country and region.
That's great. Thank you very much. That was a very elaborative explanation to the question. Thank you, Zayed. Khalifa, if I may turn on to you for a question, please. I belong to Khalifa Fund U, but for the sake of panel discussion, I would like to raise a question for the benefit of many of the attendees here on our live session. Knowing that Khalifa Fund major focus is on supporting startup and SMEs. How do you see the investment activity currently on part of SMEs, based on your work, based on your interaction with SMEs, based on what you see in the market currently? And I'm talking about in the current state.
Okay. Thank you, Raman. We at Khalifa Fund currently, we don't see any aggressive investment at the moment. As you know, since the government took and adapted drastic measures to help contain the spread of this pandemic, people is a bit hesitated, and as many sectors deeply affected. Let me give you an example of some sectors on top of my head. Like we have tourism, travels, we have entertainment, F&Bs, training, nurseries, especially nurseries. While this crisis has generated a lot of challenges, it also created opportunity to participate in the technology sector. As you know, even us as Khalifa Fund, community around the world moved to remote working, homeschooling, while businesses across all industry has been forced to innovate, digitalize, transform for this unprecedented basis to ensure continuously, to stay alive. In March of this year, traditionally UAE voice over IP is blocked. But since March, UAE TRA unblocked most of those services, like Zoom, the one that we are using now, Microsoft Teams. This helped minimize the impact of this pandemic to business, even created opportunity for some to shift and open new channel to sell their services to online platforms. And first time, I'm talking about myself here, but first time I see in this region fitness instruction online, independence, consultancy. We see artists and etc. This is my take into this investment as of the current situation.
Okay, thank you. I will maybe in few minutes. I will probably put up a question to you in connection to what you have spoken now, where we will try to focus more on the sectors. You touched upon technology. You touched upon like the lighter side of it, like fitness instructions. And though we are taking it very lightly, but actually people are using it. There is a real business going on, because once you are confined to the boundaries of your home, you will try and find out ways to conduct yourself. So businesses are picking up these unique opportunities because there is a market available. Yeah, this is how it is. Anyway, I will say a few words, then I will have a follow-up question with the colleague from MAGNiTT, Zayed. So, Zayed, in these kind of situations, there are two school of thoughts. When the market is down, or the crisis situation, there are two school of thoughts. One school of thought says that the investment cost is very low right now compared to good times. So this is probably the best time to invest. And the people who invest now, they'll be the first ones to reap the benefits when the recovery starts, which we are already seeing the signs of happening. The market is coming back. And the other school of thought says that keep your cash on hold, sit on your cash. Once the market starts recovering, then you start investing. So having these two school of thoughts, my follow-up question on these is with you is, the big question is, on in our minds right now when we think about all these things, are venture investors still investing in the region? Because that scenario will tell us something, that what kind of investment is happening, which sectors are getting investment, so how the SMEs should be looking at which direction. So for
Yes.
you.
Okay, thank you for that question. I think that's a very important one. I myself subscribe to the first train of thought that you mentioned. I know that there was this very popular article going around, I think it was like a month or two ago, which was all those big companies now, or big startups now, that actually came out of the 2007, 2008 crisis. So you have the likes of your Airbnb that really came from that crisis. They sustained through it and then, grew tremendously. And back in when it first started in March, the pandemic, it reached a certain level. We actually reached out to venture investors to ask them that very question: are you still investing or looking to invest in startups? And the majority of them said that yes, they were still looking to invest. And of course, it's been a few months since then, and we recently launched our H1 report, so looking at the first 6 months of the year, and it actually shows that investors still invest in startups in the region. So the number of deals was down just a little bit, but the amount of funding was up quite considerably, about 35% compared to the same period last year. And I don't want to talk too much about, the industries, because I know that Khalifa will have a few important points about that. But what we also saw is that a few investors mentioned that they are focusing more on portfolio companies. So the startups that they already invested in previously, that was their main focus. So, they need to help those startups and entrepreneurs through this crisis. So do they need to invest in those startups to keep them going through this period? And secondly, we saw a slight shift in what we call funding stage towards slightly later stage companies, as certain investors found more comfort in, already established companies rather than the super early startups that might not have proved themselves just yet. Those are the major changes that we're seeing. But yeah, I definitely think that this is an interesting point in time to keep investing, because like you said, the fundamentals of the business don't change, but you are able to invest at a more favorable valuation as an investor, which, let's say 3, 6, 9 months down the line, I assume that the majority of this will be over, and then you have a considerable stake in the company.
Yeah, thank you very much. Life has to go on, actually. Yeah.
Yes.
So people, especially the entrepreneurial people, find their way out. Thank you very much for that answer. Khalifa, the last answer linked question to that, where you talked about the cautious approach by SMEs. So as part of that cautious approach, the question is, what do you see? What are the sectors SMEs are currently focusing upon? Whether it is for a new startup, or it is for expansion, or maybe in existing businesses, there is a diversification. So what are the sectors SMEs you see focusing?
Perfect. This is a great question, Raman, because what we see in Khalifa Fund as an inflow application for funding and support from, let's say, from the last 3 to 4 years up to the point of the pandemic start, we've seen a lot in people focusing into service and retail sectors and F&Bs. However, we noticed after or during the pandemic that there is an increase of different sectors. For example, food online delivery. We saw cybersecurity, health, agriculture, because people are shifting with the demand. We have a big demand for those sectors in the current time. I also want to highlight that since the inception, Khalifa Fund had a restricted activity. It's a activity where we evaluate in different year based on the shift in the market. And you can look at this restricted activity in the Khalifa Fund website. And we are currently working with a consultant to update this restricted activity because of this pandemic happened. And the restricted is mostly focused on those traditional business, Raman. And these type of business that we seen everywhere from the 80s up to this moment. So we want to shift the people away from it. So yeah, that's about it. You can look at this restricted activity and in our website.
Okay, thank you. Something linked to this. You mentioned about agriculture. You mentioned about technology. You mentioned about some other sectors there.
Yes.
Would you also like to talk about a bit? Because my opinion, and I'm sure you will agree on this, there are very important government initiatives, support initiatives came recently that have also laid the the ground for business investment into those sectors, because those are becoming priorities now for the country itself. So businesses are having an opportunity, and as a support also as an investment opportunity. So would you like to say something on that?
Yes, thank you, Raman. We see from our leader a big attention to especially agriculture, especially what we saw during the pandemic and the cut of the what's called export and the import around the world. We were ready, alhamdulillah, in UAE. In Khalifa Fund itself, we funded almost 110 from hydroponic and organic farms in UAE because of the region. We need this type of technology. We cannot raise like any other country. Regarding healthcare, yes, there is a big attention from the government, and I think they will allocate fund as well. And during the short terms, we're gonna see more initiatives coming regarding those two sectors, Raman. As in Khalifa Fund, our appetite opened more for those type of sectors, but not yet we had any what's called entrepreneur who applied for those type of businesses, who's ready, who have the know-how, which is important, especially with this type of technology in agriculture. So hopefully in the short term, we're going to see some from here until the end of the year. We're going to see something initiative coming either the local government or the federal government as well regarding agriculture, especially, and healthcare.
Okay, thank you very much. That's related to food security initiative.
Yes,
And
yes.
say you spoke about the Airbnb, and I started getting questions on the Airbnb. So I couldn't understand. So very short question came here. So we have a dedicated time, but since it came, let us talk about it. Somebody is asking what happened to Airbnb model. I did not really understand what they mean to understand.
Yeah.
Model is flourishing. It's still running because everything is affected now. I believe Airbnb market is also. Yeah.
Yeah.
People are not traveling.
No doubt that Airbnb is being affected right now. The point that I was making is that during a crisis like this, completely unexpected by many people, it's very similar to maybe a crisis in the 2007, 2008. Like everybody was very worried about the startup sector and the investment sector as well, and rightfully so, because there was a big downturn in 2007, 2008. The point that I was making is that even during these times, I think it will be harder for startups and SMEs to, do business initially, but there are always ones that will float to the top. And there were quite a few startups and SMEs or big companies that were founded during those times. So even though we are in a situation now that, might not be favorable for a startup environment, there were a lot of startups, good startups, that were founded during the 2007, 2008 crisis. And one thing that I will say about this particular like COVID-19 crisis is that even though it wasn't expected, and of course nobody wants something like this, what we've seen, and Khalifa mentioned it, is that a lot of startups are either pivoting their business model or they are doubling down on the technology that they are using. So it's almost acting as a catalyst towards online tech adoption, but of course in certain sectors that Khalifa highlighted already. So just to reiterate, I didn't say that Airbnb is thriving now, because of course they are being impacted as well. They just came out of a previous crisis, so 2007, 2008 crisis.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, there are follow-up questions coming. Thank you very much, guys. The audience was sending questions. Keep sending questions, and whenever I get a chance, we'll keep picking questions. I'll keep some questions towards the end also. I will discuss further follow-up question with you now, and that is MAGNiTT released the first half, the H1 report recently. And one of the highlights which we are seeing, and I have here on the question also, that the H1 investment already reached 95% of 2019 investment, okay, by the venture capitalists. So tell us more about that. What does it mean? And secondly, if you can mention to us and the audience some more highlights which are of interest for new startups, tech startups. I know MAGNiTT is a platform for tech startups. So whatever information you can give us, highlights from the H1 report, and especially focusing on this 95% that we achieved. Investment of half year of 2020 already reached 95% of 2009. What is the relevance?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and thank you for that. So, like you said, we already saw 95% of venture funding in the first 6 months of 2020 compared to the entire year of 2019. So, of course, nobody saw COVID-19 coming. And in our 2019 report, we predicted that we would see $1 billion of investments in the region. And we thought maybe, COVID-19 might dampen that expectation a little bit. But as I mentioned previously, a lot of investors are actually looking at slightly later stage investments, which automatically means that they are writing larger checks to those companies. So we've seen $150 million investment, for example. We've seen 60 million, 50 million. Once those numbers happen often enough, that will add up to the 659 million that was invested in the first half of 2020.
My apologies. So in terms of total investment, it is 95% reached of 2019. Not
yes, of the entire year.
Number of investments, yeah?
Of amount of investment, dollar investment,
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And I highlighted a few points before already, but you still see that those later stage startups are majorly in the UAE, because again, it was one of the first movers in the startup ecosystem. So the startups just have reached a later stage in their development, raising larger funding rounds. One thing that we also saw and that I mentioned shortly is that Saudi Arabia and Egypt are seeing a lot of deals and an increase in deals compared to the first half of 2019. So those are very much up and coming ecosystems. And very similar to what Khalifa mentioned, we saw a little bit of a shift of investment towards industries or sectors that were positively impacted by COVID-19. So, think about grocery e-commerce or delivery, food e-commerce, fintech or education, for example, and healthcare. Those all saw both an increase in funding and an increase in number of deals, both in the UAE and the MENA region.
Okay, you mentioned about a good chunk of investment came to UAE. And is it okay on the live session here to mention a few names who received?
Yeah, of course. I'd be happy to. So what we call mega deals of $100 million plus. There was one investment. It's called, the company is called EMPG, Emerging Markets Property Group. And they have those online classified real estate platforms. So Bayut, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but is a subsidiary of that company. So if you are looking to buy a house or rent a house or something like that, that's that type of platform. Another big investment was the $60 million in Katopi, which is a food delivery or ghost kitchen startup. Those were the two largest funding rounds. And in Egypt, we saw Visita, which is an online healthcare startup, raise 40 million as well.
Okay. So things are moving or revolving around the online platforms and activities.
Yes.
Thank you very much. That was a very good insight. Khalifa, shifting towards you, I will join two questions together now. My interest is we are gradually in the session moving towards more towards the technology, tech enterprises. So we'll try to focus more on that now. So two questions join. One, I would like to ask that how Khalifa Fund looks at the tech businesses, and what is Khalifa Fund appetite to support technology startups or for technology adoption by existing SMEs, which we have supported, or they are operating and they come for technology upgrade in their respective businesses, either as a result of current situation or they have their own plan for growth or something. Okay. And at the same time, how do you see the use of technology on part of SMEs, the typical SMEs which we serve or which we see? So this is a combined question.
All right. So let me start with how regarding of the technology part of an SMEs and the current situation. Allow me, Raman, to start with the three main benefits we've seen in Khalifa Fund during the year for the use of technology. That's the way how made most of the businesses efficient and effective. Like number one is basically opening more channel to drive sales through social media, social messages. We have email, an instant message, and this type of thing will help, especially during this pandemic time. We also need to highlight the importance of a special system like enterprise ERP systems and CRM, as most of those services now, it's the cloud-based computing, which is cheaper than the traditional businesses. This type of software will make you more effective and engaging with your customers. But regarding these two things, to software and clouding, I have a small recommendation. As what we saw during March, when everybody went home and started working remotely, we saw the slow in the internet. So I recommend some business owner to have both of cloud-based and their own server as well, just to prevent any internet interruption in the future. Last benefit, which is I think is the most important one, it's a customer data analysis. It have to be with the respect of customer privacy. This data can speak to you, can give you what is the customer behavior. You can even plan your marketing, you plan your even labor leaves based on this. Going back to this question, in this uncertain time, SMEs business owners are turning to technology to keep their company alive. We seen this one. We saw a revamped website. We saw somebody who weren't ready before this pandemic. They revamped their Facebook, Instagram account just to start opening channel and drive sales. But however, I still have prior to the pandemics, there is some people did not adapt technology because of, let me give you like a short reason because of this. There is a lack of expertise, especially in the region, comparing to the West. We have a lack of capital. You know, those small SMEs, they don't have that much of a capital to cover any cost. And cloud services, yes, it's cheaper than a traditional system, but still expensive. We have a rapid change of technology. Every day we see new technology, and there is unfamiliarity with technology. We have owners who just want to deal with technology. Going forward, I think since the government mandated most of the use of the technology in a various reason, like all government service now is online, VAT processes and etc. We need to launch a digital scheme to encourage technology adoption among SMEs. I've seen some such a thing in India, where the government took these initiatives and talking to big players to get them the best, to get those SME on board of cloud-based systems. We need awareness, more awareness. In the end, I think, unfortunately, most of the SME do not have a solid digital capability or the ability to digitalize their part of their business model will not sustain, especially those in most affected economy sector. You mentioned another thing, Raman, about Khalifa Fund appetite. Tech is part of Khalifa Fund's soul from the inception, and it has been increasing through the years. We created Khalifa Fund Innovation. We have various innovation idea being submitted to us. And we worked with an ICT, for example, fund. We worked with our stakeholder to promote this type of an activity. However, our data isn't rich with tech business. Despite the effort to drive in such an idea, I think after the pandemic, this will be different. In terms of technology adoption, we saw an increase of technology adoption in our applicant, especially after our collaboration with Facebook. Raman, you worked into this for launching the program MENA Business, which is how to start your e-commerce. Again, SME need to catch up with technology and get a comparative advantage or close. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's this is going to be a reality that nobody can run away from technology. You like it, you don't like it, you have to adopt it. We kept saying for years that it's one global market. The world is one global market. You can connect with anybody. I think this has become a reality now, and people have to think very seriously, and they have to take very serious actions on that. There are some questions coming on regarding the role of MAGNiTT. I think as we go forward, maybe there'll be, after a few minutes, maybe you need to speak a bit specific on how people can benefit from MAGNiTT, connecting to the investors and sort of thing, and maybe very quick, because we have to keep track of time also. Questions are there, but not many, but we'll go on to. So I'll come back to you on the question now. There's a question. Khalifa talked about some sectors, business sectors affected, but the follow-up question with you is which have been in industries that are most affected, both positively and negatively. It's for you, Sheikh.
Yes, thank you, Raman. I think we covered the positively impacted industries quite well. The fintech, the education and e-commerce, for example, those are all ones that have seen a lot of adoption throughout COVID-19. One industry or a few industries that actually saw a drop in terms of funding are the ones that you would expect as well. Like, since there were lockdowns, travel stopped. So travel and tourism and just regular retail took a big hit in terms of venture funding and also in terms of revenues, because we did a report with INSEAD. It was 2 weeks ago, just to look at the impact of COVID-19. And you saw those types of industries, so the travel and tourism and retail, those were the main ones that actually saw a significant drop in terms of revenues. So yeah, that's the main story here. Like, there are ones that are obviously hit, and those are the retail and travel and tourism, and there are ones that had the unlikely benefit of COVID-19.
Okay. There's a lot of talk about, and I think one can witness it from the share market itself, uh, the major beneficiaries, uh, streaming, entertainment, live streaming, and those sort of related industries. I'm sure. Was that part of the study, or you have any information uh, about this particular industry? Because we are seeing growth and growth and growth into this. Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of streaming, I know that a Lebanon-based company, I'm not sure if you're familiar with, is called Anghami. That's the music streaming platform, and they do a lot of different
I think we heard him on one of the webinars of.
Yes, Eli Habib. Yes, their CTO. He's a great guy. But they've seen, of course, a lot of adoption as well, and they had this great program actually where they try to help SMEs or startups with free advertising on their platform as well, just to try to help the SMEs in need. And I think that streaming in general, it does, or video streaming or music streaming, it's not mentioned that often. But when we talked to Eli, we did see that, well, first of all, Anghami was one of the first ones to actually, let people work from home. Even before, mandatory by the government, they said, okay, we're going to do this now. And they're still doing it to this day. And yes, they've seen a significant increase in their adoption. I can only speak for them. I haven't heard too much about the other streaming services, to be completely honest.
Okay, that's fair enough. Khalifa, since we are getting closer from general scenario to the specific scenario now, the technology, and now for the benefit of the audience today, and for all of us, I'll ask you a question. What other services, I'm talking about specifically in these times, what other services Khalifa Fund is offering to support SMEs in these difficult times? So let us go to some specifics now, because I know very well that we have supported so many people during these times. So let us hear.
See, before we did the support, we tried to understand, because this pandemic, for me, it's new. For everybody, I think it's new. The way how we reacted, how the business reacted. We want to understand what's going on really quick to take action. I totally recommend everybody to read the report. We collected data through surveys and various internet channel we have regarding the effect of this pandemic in the businesses. And we created a report. This report, you can see it through our Instagram page, going back, I think, the April. We announced it publicly in April, but we worked on it early on internally. Based on this report, we start taking action. Let me give you just a small examples of some of the action we took. But most of the action has been taken by the government. We thank the leader for really a prompt action to save most of the businesses. So for Khalifa Fund, basically, first thing what we did, just to help the cash flow, we did a loan payment deferral for 3 months. And we collaborated by opening channel. And then since we saw a lot of businesses start opening channel through Instagram, through Facebook, we collaborated with the logistic company to deliver all our applicants' goods to consumer with the discounted fees. And these companies, they have a permission to travel all over UAE without any restriction. And we worked with 120 landlord property development in UAE for rent payment restructure. Basically push the payment back, or even waive for effective month, which is March, April, May, and some they are start giving even for June. Thanks to them. Another thing, we saw so many initiatives start coming out. People still don't realize how to utilize these, or is they eligible for these type of government initiatives. So basically, we directed our eligible applicant to government initiative launched, and how the best way to utilize it. We also dealt with around many support requests. We received so many requests this time. Thanks to the team and support team. We receive, they work morning and night for this. We receive so many complaints here and there. People are panicking, Raman. Even when malls start opening, still footfall is not up to the standard. But hopefully now everything start coming back again. We launched special initiative. This one of the employee, her name is Aisha. She's a special initiative for Al-Eid. Basically, we promote a special project provided by our applicant for our consumer, the one that utilize mostly sweets for Al-Eid time. And we're also going to do it for next Al-Eid. We also, Raman, you guys, we had a special training, which is management business crisis. And we launched a hotline consultancy service to answer and guide all applicants during this time, and more to come, inshallah, for the initiatives. This brief of what we did, actually, Raman, during this time.
Thank you very much. Thank you. You touched upon the very important point. I'm sure many of on the session there are people who we have heard and they are listening to, and we are going forward to support more and more. And you touched upon the training part also. I'm very happy to say that Khalifa Fund Management allowed us to from March onwards to offer any training, any value addition, any consulting services free of charge to any business, any startup, any nationality, anybody, people can benefit from that. And our important collaborations, and I'm sure thousands of trainees we have handled during this period, and I'm sure many of them will get benefited from that. Right? So this is the positive side of when we get into problem, everybody comes together. It becomes a joint effort rather than individual effort. Okay, respecting the time, say my question. If you have maybe you have touched upon that, but just in quick answer, have the risk appetite for investors changed as a result of what we have gone through or what we are going through? While this 95% answers it very well, but still some insights into this.
Yes, thank you, Raman. I think that, of course, venture capital investing in tech startups is inherently a risky endeavor, of course, and the whole industry hopes to hit that one startup that ultimately reaches that. We have Kareem, for example, coming from the UAE. That's an example of one of the startups that reached a very, very high level. And of course, that's what the investors hope for. As I said, when we did the initial interviews with venture capital investors in, in March, they were looking to support their portfolio companies, so the ones that they had already invested in. And just like anybody else, they were just looking like, okay, what is this new situation? How do I respond to this? And what's the best way forward? And we did see maybe a slight reduction in risk appetite, just since they went for the more established startups, the later stage ones, which are, it's a lot safer to invest in a company that already has thousands or millions of users than, the startup that we know from all the shows, the working in the garage and trying to make your product work. We saw more later stage investments, so there was a slight shift in risk. And I don't know when you want me to reply about the MAGNiTT side of things. I'd be happy to.
I was about to ask you that, but despite my studying again and again and again, I was never able to understood the the concept of series 1, series 2, stage 1, stage 2 funding and all. And to me, it's very complicated. I don't want SMEs and startups also not to get in the complications. but in very simple words. If you can explain that and talk a little bit about MAGNiTT, be very specific. If SMEs, tech startups, or what kind of businesses who are listening to us today, they can and benefit from MAGNiTT, and which?
Yes, of course. Okay, first to your question about investment and the whole terminology around it. This is specifically for tech startups. So Kareem is a great example, just using an app to book a ride, and that's it. Not necessarily companies that manufacture something or something to that extent. It's tech startups that we are looking at. And this is where the initial funding that they received is what we call seed funding. And that's usually around $1 million on average in the region. And after that is what you mentioned, is when you go to the series A, B, C, D, E, etc. And there's no rule for this. Like, it's just the first money, outside money that a startup receives, that's what you will call seed funding. Then the next financing round that they raise, that's what you will call Series A. The next one is Series B. The next one is Series C, etc. And just for comparison, Kareem, which we mentioned, they reached up to Series F before being acquired by Uber for $3.1 billion, of course. Talking about the benefits of MAGNiTT, I will talk again specifically about the tech companies. So that could be anything. You apply tech to healthcare, to financial services, anything. The one thing that I would say
my
is
apologies. So my apologies. Any e-commerce is considered as tech, whatever they are engaged. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So we see a lot of so Souk, for example, is a great example of a good e-commerce company. Of course, it's now Amazon.ae, but they were one of those companies that grew really quickly. So it's really broad, but it needs to be tech enabled in order to qualify as a startup or a tech startup in our definitions. The way that we support them is, first of all, if they are interested in raising outside capital, they can apply for funding through the MAGNiTT platform. So we have around 70 or 80 venture capital investors on the platform who are accepting applications from startups to see if they're interested in applying for funding. We also recently released a new subscription, a fundraiser subscription, where you can look more at, okay, these are all the investors in the region. Which ones are the ones that might be interesting for me? So what industries are they interested in? Are they looking to invest in the UAE? Things like that. And the third one that I would say is, it's always, as a research person, it's always good to stay up to date with the research and analysis. So there we have free reports available on our platform where you can see the trends in the ecosystem, as well as paid ones for our subscribers. I think those are the three main ones that, again, tech-enabled businesses can benefit from MAGNiTT.
Okay, that's good. So you mentioned this, shopping around among the 70 venture capitalists or whatever. You guys you have done some filtration also for the
yes, people are able to filter.
That's a very good thing. Okay. Towards the end now, Khalifa, if I may turn on to you, is post COVID-19, and I'll have a question for Zayed also, and now my first question for Khalifa. Do you see any changing patterns to the way SMEs are conducting their operations going forward, in your opinion?
As I stated earlier, Raman, that's traditional business will not be anymore. It's not like before COVID-19. It's not like after it. We will see a different way of doing a business, especially with the remote working That's we see, especially with the restriction of number of employee to be in a specific area or a square meter. These type of things will lower the capacity of those spaces, so they will start utilizing more technology. Away from the business operation, just I need to highlight something very important as well. There will be a new field of a player for SME and startups. We need to think about this one, basically health and well-being and agriculture and in-home entertainment, cyberspace, virtual reality, food, and these type of activity. This is what we're going to be seeing in the near future. Even funders' appetite, basically VCs or government even, I think, will reduce for traditional business. They will focus more into deep tech investment, Raman. Entrepreneurs need to think around these sectors for the short terms and long as well. So this is basically what we're going to see, and we will see, inshallah, after this COVID-19, we will see how things will come, because every day we are learning a new thing, the way how our applicants deal with this pandemic.
Okay. It's probably the last question for you. What do you think the future holds for tech entrepreneurs in the region?
Oh, that's a very, very good and very loaded question. Of course, within, you know, being MAGNiTT, being within the hub of the tech ecosystem, I have to be very positive, and I am very positive about technology within the region. And the reason that I am that way is that there are so many opportunities available for SMEs, for startups to adopt technology and apply it to situations where they can make them so much better, right? So again, I don't want to go on about Kareem, but if you wanted to get from point A to point B and you did not have a car, Kareem solved that very simple problem for you. And there are a lot of opportunities like that in the UAE, in the MENA region, where you can apply technology to these kind of challenges. So yeah, I'm very optimistic about the technological advancement in the region.
So that's a very encouraging statement for the audience. If anyone is there, people, tech enterprises, or they are thinking of starting something in technology, that's a very encouraging. And I agree with you. You gave example of Kareem. Nobody until February or January thought about that we will see flower shops on Talabat, we will see pharmacy on Talabat, we will see specialty store on Talabat. This is how the changing times, this is how the adopting. The only thing is those are the platforms, they have resources to adopt to these things. Our typical SMEs and small entrepreneurs, they may not have those resources, but they have ideas, they have their strength, they have their capacity. Inshallah, they definitely, by collaboration, by support of government, support of entities like us, they'll be able to sail through, and they are sailing through. Okay, now a common question for both of you, which is any tips, any advice you would like to offer very quick for tech enterprises or SMEs or startups in general? Khalifa.
Yes. Definitely, Raman. I need to summarize whatever we captured during this 12 to 13 years of Khalifa Fund. What is successful, what is non-successful, what is make challenging. Let me start first. It's like you need to define, evaluate your goal in the medium and long run. You need to set the business idea, evaluate it thoroughly, and see how feasible is it. You need to build a solid business plan with innovative value proposition and delivery channel, and even targeting a new customer segment. You need to think about source of fund. This is important as well. You need to get relevant experience to understand your industry inside out, including aspects that you may not be familiar with, or even include like marketing, accounting, how to do things. If you don't have this type of expertise, spend some time working in a similar company, shadow a business owner, at least to get insight into this industrial. Know yourself. This is very important. You need to know yourself. Are you, for example, do you avoid unexpected? Can you handle the height? And these businesses go up and down, especially in this time, what we saw. Do you have the enough financial adequacy to cover your business during crisis? Do you have time for this one? And the last but not least is the team. You need to build a strong team. You need to train them because this is the one who will take your business from point A to B. Inshallah, will be successful as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's say a few words on
Yes.
for entrepreneurs here.
Yes, I can only echo what Khalifa just said. And I think that two important points that he touched upon is the team, the last thing that he said. It is incredibly important. And especially for small companies, you are working with these people 24/7 and you're trying to build something that is much larger, much greater, but it all starts from the small core that you are coming from. And you really need to trust and have faith in the people that you're working with to do the absolute best and to work hard to expand your business. And the other point that he also mentioned a little bit ago is the data on your consumers and just in general, the understanding of who your consumers are. So it differs from company to company, but you can have a lot of information about who comes to your website, for example, what type of people are they, where do they come from. Just tracking all of that information gives you so much insight into, oh, I thought that we were targeting these types of people, but actually we are attracting a lot of these people, which can help you, again, pivot towards that and double down on something like that. So I think that's an excellent recommendation, and I can only support that.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think most of the questions I asked, or either it was those were listed with me, or it came on the Q&A panel also. I have covered all. There's nothing left to be answered. So, and the time is also over. We are 4 minutes over the time. Just I will do the duty which any moderator has to thank people at the end. So as we now approach to the end of the session, in closing, I would like to thank our panelists, Mr. Khalifa and Mr. Sisse, for being with us and sharing all useful information during the course of today's session. Highly appreciate that. Thanks for participating organizations. The entity Mr. Khalifa and I belong to, that is Khalifa Fund and MAGNiTT, for all their support. Special thanks to the marketing and communication teams at Khalifa Fund and MAGNiTT, and to our associates like KBS Communication for the great work in promoting the webinar and ensuring smooth delivery and live streaming for the community. Last but not the least, on behalf of Khalifa Fund and MAGNiTT, I would like to convey thanks to our audience for today, joined in very large numbers here, we could see that, and which form from the community who joined today, startups, SMEs, institutional representatives, our colleagues from Khalifa Fund and MAGNiTT, and the potential entrepreneurs for their attendance in large numbers. Thank you very much. It's time to say goodbye till we meet again for another exciting session. Keep following us on our social media at Khalifa Fund _official and MAGNiTT _MENA. Stay safe, stay healthy, and be happy. Goodbye, everyone. We are closing the session now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.